Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavad Gita. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 20, 3rd canto, chapter 29, text 1 and 2. Explanation of devotional service by Lord Kapila. Devahūtir uvāca. lakṣaṇaṁ mahad-ādīnāṁ. lakṣaṇaṁ mahad-ādīnāṁ. prakṛteḥ puruṣasya. prakṛteḥ puruṣasya. svarūpaṁ lakṣyate mīṣāṁ. svarūpaṁ lakṣyate mīṣāṁ. yena tat-pāramārthikam. yena tat-pāramārthikam. yathā sāṅkhyeṣu kathitaṁ. Yeah, I think there's a second. Okay, we'll just chant the part. All right, that's it. Yeah. lakṣaṇaṁ mahad-ādīnāṁ. prakṛteḥ puruṣasya. svarūpaṁ lakṣyate mīṣāṁ. yena tat-pāramārthikam. Others? Marge? Mataji's? So I'll chant the next verse. Yathā sāṅkhyeṣu kathitaṁ yan-mūlaṁ tat-prakṛkṣate bhakti-yogasya me mārgaṁ brūhi vistaraśaḥ prabho. Sorry, then brūhi vistaraśaḥ prabho. Okay, Devahūti uvāca. Devahūti said, lakṣaṇaṁ, symptoms, mahat-ādīnāṁ, of the mahat-tattva, and so on. prakṛteḥ, of material nature, puruṣasya, of the spirit, cha, and svarūpam, the nature, lakṣyate, is described, amīṣām, of those, yena, by which, tat-pārama-arthikam, the true nature of them, yathā, as, sāṅkhyeṣu, in Sankhya philosophy, kathitaṁ, is explained, yat, of which, yan-mūlaṁ, ultimate end, tat, that, prakṛteḥ, they call, bhakti-yogasya, of devotional service, to me, mārgaṁ, the path, brūhi, please explain, vistaraśaḥ, at length, prabho, my dear Lord Kapila. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Devahūti inquired, my dear Lord, you have already very scientifically described the symptoms of the total material nature and the characteristics of the spirit according to the Sankhya system of philosophy. Now I shall request you to explain the path of devotional service, which is the ultimate end of all philosophical systems. Purport. In this 29th chapter, the glories of devotional service are elaborately explained, and the influence of time on the conditioned soul is also described. The purpose of elaborately describing the influence of time is to detach the conditioned soul from his material activities, which are considered to be simply a waste of time. In the previous chapter, material nature, the spirit, and the Supreme Lord or Supersoul are analytically studied. In this chapter, the principles of bhakti yoga or devotional service, the execution of activities in the eternal relationship between the living entities and the personality of Godhead, are explained. Bhakti yoga, devotional service, is the basic principle of all systems of philosophy. All philosophy which does not aim for devotional service to the Lord is considered merely mental speculation. But of course, bhakti yoga with no philosophical basis is more or less sentiment. There are two classes of men. Some consider themselves intellectually advanced and simply speculate and meditate, and others are sentimental and have no philosophical basis for their propositions. Neither of these can achieve the highest goal of life, or if they do, it will take many, many years. Vedic literature therefore suggests that there are three elements, namely the Supreme Lord, the living entity, and their eternal relationship. And the goal of life is to follow the principles of bhakti or devotional service and ultimately attain to the planet of the Supreme Lord in full devotion and love as an eternal servitor of the Lord. Sankhya philosophy is the analytical study of all existence. One has to understand everything by examining its nature and characteristics. This is called acquirement of knowledge. But one should not simply acquire knowledge without reaching the goal of life, or the basic principle for acquiring knowledge, bhakti yoga. If we give up bhakti yoga and simply busy ourselves in the analytical study of the nature of things as they are, then the result will be practically nil. It is stated in the Bhagavatam that such engagement is something like husking a paddy. There is no use beating the husk if the grain has already been removed. By the scientific study of material nature, the living entity and the supersoul, one has to understand the basic principle of devotional service to the Lord. Om Agyanātam Dasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unolitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakaramayam Dharati Swaparantikam. So here in the purport, Prabhupada says the purpose of elaborately describing the influence of time is to detach the conditioned soul from his material activities, which are considered to be simply a waste of time. Simply a waste of time. So, of course, we hear in the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 2, I think it's text 8, it goes, Dharmas vanustita pumsam vikshvakshkenu katasu yat nopaliyad yadaratim shrama evahi kevalam, that activities, occupational duties performed by men, which do not evoke an attraction for hearing the messages of the personality of Godhead, are only shrama evahi kevalam, a useless waste of time. So that's unfortunately where human society is today. I was just this morning, I was kind of meditating on a verse in the Bhagavad Gita, similar message. It's chapter 5, text 24. The verse goes, Yontan sukon tar aramas tatantar jyotir evacha sayogi brahma nirvanam brahma bhuto digachati. Translation is, one whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoices within, and whose aim is inward, is actually the perfect mystic. He is liberated in the Supreme, and ultimately he attains the Supreme. So purport Prabhupada says, unless one is able to relish happiness from within, how can one retire from external engagements meant for deriving superficial happiness? So I was just meditating upon that. Elsewhere Prabhupada says, Anandamaya Bhyasat, that the nature of the living entity is always hankering for happiness. That's ultimately what every living entity is after. And pretty much everything that everybody does, human beings, they're trying to move towards that happiness and move away from a negative experience. So that's what it's all about. Now, Prabhupada says something that I found was very insightful here. It says, unless one is able to relish happiness from within, how can he retire from external engagements meant for deriving superficial happiness? And I was reflecting upon that, and I was thinking, that's all that's going on out there. You could sum up the entire world, the entire modern civilization, minus the Krishna consciousness movement, as just a big operation of external engagements meant for deriving superficial happiness. That's aside from Krishna consciousness, that's all that really is going on out there. It looks great, it's very attractive, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur said the more we become attracted to the material advancement of life, the more we become like asses. It's just totally missing the point. You see, just like that verse in the Bhagavatam, Shrama evahi kevalam. All activities that don't inspire us in our Krishna consciousness and spiritual life, useless waste of time. All these external engagements for deriving superficial happiness, waste of time. Goes on to say, a liberated person enjoys happiness by factual experience. He can therefore sit silently at any place and enjoy the activities of life from within. So that's what we're after. We want to be able to enjoy the activities of life from within. Prabhupada says, sit silently and at any place. I want to clarify that a little bit. Silence in Krishna consciousness doesn't mean, that's a misconception. Silence in Krishna consciousness means this. This is right from the chapter 12, Bhagavad Gita, text 18 and 19. Prabhupada says, this verse is talking about the good qualities of devotees. So he says, he does not speak of anything but topics about Krishna. Therefore, he is called silent. Silent does not mean that one should not speak. No. Silent means that one should not speak nonsense. You shouldn't speak things that aren't Krishna Katha. Silence means that one should not speak nonsense. One should speak only of essentials, and the most essential speech for the devotee is to speak for the sake of the Supreme Lord. So that's our program. That should be our program. Engaging the speech in Krishna's service. That's a very important point. Prabhupada would repeatedly say in various lectures that Krishna can't be understood by the blunt material senses. He's understood by devotional service, beginning with the tongue. Tongue has two functions. One is tasting, prasadam, and the other is vibrating, chanting Hare Krishna, preaching, talking about Krishna. See? And Prabhupada would, once again, repeatedly say that if somebody just takes a vow, makes a determination that they're just going to do those two things, really seriously, just try to just only eat prasadam, only use your power of producing sound to glorify Krishna by chanting Hare Krishna, preaching Krishna consciousness, discussing the philosophy with devotees, then just by doing those two things, you're guaranteed to become Krishna conscious. The verse is, Atak Shri Krishna Namadi Nabhaved Gurayam Indriye Sevan Muke Hi Jiva Do. That's for Swayam Eva Spadatya. Then Krishna becomes revealed. Krishna's pleased by just that austerity. It sounds, actually, it's a lot harder than what it sounds. It sounds really easy. It sounds like, oh yeah, I could do that. Anybody could do that. Try it. Try doing it. It's a lot more of a challenge than what you think when you actually roll up your sleeves and you try to start doing it. But that's the program. That's the program for, as it says in the previous, relishing happiness from within. That we just, we use our power of speech to chant Hare Krishna, talk about Krishna, glorify Krishna. Prabhupada says in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, very famous section where it's just Arjuna's asking Krishna, what are the symptoms of a person whose consciousness is merged in transcendence? How does he speak? What is his language? How does he sit? And how does he walk? And Prabhupada in the purport to that verse, it's actually the purport to that verse, Prabhupada says, as there are symptoms for each and every man in terms of his particular situation, similarly one who is Krishna conscious has his particular nature of talking, walking, thinking, feeling, etc. As a rich man has the symptoms by which he is known as a rich man, and a diseased man has symptoms by which he is known as diseased, or a learned man has his symptoms, so a man in transcendental consciousness of Krishna has specific symptoms in various dealings. So that's what we want to be. We want to be men and women in transcendental consciousness of Krishna. So Prabhupada says, one can know his specific symptoms from the Bhagavad Gita. Here it comes. This is it. Most important is how the man in Krishna consciousness speaks. For speech is the most important quality of any man. See? So even in the Bible it says something, it's not like what defileth the person is not what goes into his mouth, but what comes out. So kind of a little bit of a support there. But so it is said that a fool is undiscovered as long as he does not speak, and certainly a well-dressed fool cannot be identified unless he speaks, but as soon as he speaks, he reveals himself at once. The immediate symptom of a Krishna conscious man is that he speaks only of Krishna and of matters relating to him. Other symptoms then automatically follow as stated below. And then the rest of the chapter talks about all the symptoms of somebody whose consciousness is merged in transcendence. But it all starts there. It starts with that. Same point. It starts with engaging the tongue in Krishna's service, chanting Hare Krishna, talking about Krishna with the devotees, discussing the philosophy to better understand it, and then going out and preaching, trying to encourage other people to engage in devotional service and eating prasadam. Those things. It starts with that, and then, as Prabhupada says, other symptoms then automatically follow. See, so that's what, might as well start at the beginning, right? This is the beginning. The beginning is this. The beginning is to do these simple austerities. And if we do like that, we'll experience what was being described here in that verse I quoted from the 5th chapter, that we will be able to enjoy happiness by factual experience. We won't be sitting silently in any particular place, but we will enjoy the activities of life from within. A great example of that, of course, Prabhupada is the greatest example of every good quality in Krishna consciousness, but another great example of that, and it's nicely described by Srinivasacharya in a song he wrote called Sad Goswami Astika, is the 6 Goswamis. The 6 Goswamis were an example of that, being able to enjoy the activities of life from within. It's stated about them, Sankhya Purvakanama. This is actually the result of practicing sadhana bhakti, okay? Sankhya Purvakanama Ganatibi Kalavasani Kuto Nidra Hada Vihada Kadi Vijito Katyanta Dino Chayo Radha Krishna Gunasmritir Madhuriman Nandena Samhoito Bande Rupa Sanatano Raguyago Shujiva Gopalago. So it's said about the six Goswamis that they conquered over eating and sleeping. They conquered over eating and sleeping. They're always chanting the holy name of the Lord and bowing down in scheduled measurement. See, so they had a regulative principle. Same thing like with us. They had a certain number of rounds they were chanting every day. Whether it's 64 or more, I don't know. Actually, it's very hard to chant 64. We're so lucky Prabhupada was so merciful. I got up very early this morning because I went to bed very early last night. And I had 16 rounds chanted before Mangal Arati. And then I decided, I didn't know what to do with myself, basically. So I just thought, well, I'll just chant I'll continue chanting. So I sat down during the japa period, and I chanted another 16 rounds. I don't want to chant anymore. I mean, that's a lot of rounds. You know, it's a lot of work to get. That's only halfway to 64. I can't imagine what it would be like trying to, if I had to chant 64 rounds every day, and on top of that, go out on Sankirtan, and it would be, I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible, but man, that'd be challenging. So we're very fortunate. Prabhupada was very merciful to us, and he gave us a quota that's manageable for, I guess, us Westerners, you know. It's 16, no less. But anyway, the six Goswamis, they were chanting according to a numerical strength, whatever it was. And they were bowing down. I think Raghunath Das Goswami was offering obeisances to some like really big number of devotees every day. And so it's said by doing that, they conquered over eating and sleeping, which is a big accomplishment. And it's a big accomplishment to conquer over eating and sleeping. Some nights I could easily sleep 8 hours. If I try to be really austere, I can get by on 6. But if I just allow myself to not have any alarm clock or anything like that, I can sleep 8 hours. That's 1/3 of a day. That's 1/3 of a day just gobbled up by nidra, sleep. I feel so like embarrassed when I wake up and I think back about, well, I have to sleep for 8 hours. When I go on Sankirtan, especially if it's like a day like today, it's a little bit, chilly, overcast, even maybe drizzly. When I'm out there for like a half hour, an hour, I feel like it's a big deal, Meantime, you just 8 hours of my life have just been gobbled up by sleep. We're really, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that, at least myself, I'm really fallen, really conditioned. Sometimes, I might be walking around someday thinking, yeah, I'm really an advanced devotee. No, you're not. You're just sleeping 8 hours out of 24. 8 hours of your day is just gobbled up in ignorance. And then, you maybe do 4 hours of actually Sankirtan. You think that's some like super big deal. Anyway, the six Goswamis, that wasn't their program. The six Goswamis were, Prabhupada would say, they would sleep like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours max, Raghunath Das Goswami was having a little bit of charanamrita once every other day. I mean, that's what's really called conquering over eating and sleeping. They were like spiritual supermen. So anyway, but it goes on to say that they conquered over eating and sleeping, and they were always meek and humble, enchanted, this is the real point, enchanted by remembering the transcendental qualities of the Lord. See, so they're examples of what we're talking about in that verse. They were absorbed in Krishna consciousness. And because they were absorbed in Krishna consciousness, they were in ecstasy. They were in ecstasy, because of their hearing and chanting and Nana Shastra Vichadanaika Nipano Sadharma Samstapako Lokanam Hitakarino Tribhuvane Manyo Saranyakaro Radha Krishna Padara Vinda Bhajanan Nandena Mataliko Bande Rupa Sanatano Raguyago Shujiva Gopalago. They were scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures. Why? For the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. That was their engagement. They're scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures just to figure out how we're going to present this so people can relate to it, so they can, feel like, okay, I can get my head around that. They were, not scratching their heads and really working hard, to try to, do that. That was their engagement. And aside from the chanting and the bowing down and scheduled measurements, also another thing they did, and this is really, it was mentioned in this earlier, and Prabhupada I read from the chapter 12. How's it go? No. Going to cheat here. Sorry. Oh yeah. Tyaktva tornamashesha mandalapati srenam sada tuchavat bhutva dina ganeshiko karunaya ko pina kantashrito. Once again, gopi bhava rasam rasadi lahari kalola magnamahor bande rupa sanatana ruguyago shijiva gopataka. They kicked off all association of aristocracies insignificant. They treated themselves as mendicants. They were wearing kopin. Prabhupada translated as loincloths, but basically they were wearing kopins. They were living under a different tree every night. In other words, they were not comfy. They had a comfy setup. They were very wealthy because they were ministers in the government of Nawab Hussain Shah. And, they were actually, originally they were Saraswat Brahmins. But according to the Bhakti Ratnakar, what happened was, Prabhupada, this is in the Bhakti Ratnakar, but Prabhupada never directly said it. They got threatened. They were approached by the Islamic occupational government, and they were basically told, we want you to come and, work with us. And no, we don't want to do that. Why should you? You're Muslim. Well, it's not going to go very well for your community if you don't. Basically, that was it. You see, they got threatened that unless they work for the Islamic occupational government, there's going to be something that's, is going to happen to the community. So they did. And they became basically, they were given Muslim names, Dabir Khas, Shakir Malik, and they even, Prabhupada doesn't specify, he doesn't, give the details, but they even adopted some of the habits of the Muslims. And they were rejected from the Brahmin, community like that. So, but they became very wealthy, and they gave that all up. As soon as when they met Lord Chaitanya and they had the opportunity to engage in devotional service, they just turned their back on that tuchavat as insignificant in order to engage fully in devotional service. And Prabhupada says in this purport in the 12th canto, this is 12th chapter here, which I read, he says, here it goes, yeah. He says, nor does he care for any residential facility. He may sometimes live underneath a tree, and he may sometimes live in a very palatial building. He is attracted to neither. So that's the proper standard for a devotee when we're supposed to be, ready to do our service. The service is the priority, and sometimes you're going to live comfortably, sometimes not. But whatever we have to do to do our service, we're prepared to accept that. So that's, and the Six Goswamis certainly exemplified that. They were, living under, not only were they living under a tree, they were living under another, different tree, it's stated every night. So they really, But, once again, they were absorbed in the mood of the gopis and engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna. Then it goes on to say, towards the end of the song, Radha kunda tate kalindi tanaya tire chavam sivate premon mada vashada shesha dasaya grasto pramato sada gayanto chakada harer gunavaram bababi bhuto mudha bande rupa sanatana raguyago shijiva gopalago. They were, by the way, all these verses start off with Srinivasacharya goes, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the six Goswamis, and he gives their names. He says, and repeats that each time. But that verse, the translation of that verse says, they were sometimes on the bank of Radhakund Lake or on the shores of the Yamuna, and sometimes at Vamsibat. There they appeared just like madmen in full ecstasy of love for Krishna. They appeared like madmen in full ecstasy of love for Krishna, exhibiting different transcendental symptoms in their bodies, and they were merged in the ecstasy of Krishna consciousness. So my point is this is what we're looking for. Right, we start in the beginning of the class, I said, Anandamaya Bhyasat, it's right from the Vedanta Sutra. We're after happiness, we're after Ananda, and it's there in Krishna consciousness. This is confirming that. If we actually get into our devotional service in a very sincere and serious way, this is what we got to look forward to, right? What was just heard being described here, becoming like madmen in full ecstasy of love for Krishna, exhibiting different transcendental symptoms in our bodies and being merged in the ecstasy of Krishna consciousness. We have to follow in the footsteps of Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta, Gorkishore Das Babaji, Bhaktivinoda, all the predecessor acharyas, 6 Goswamis, Lord Chaitanya, basically demonstrated the same thing. We have to follow in their footsteps, and hopefully by doing that, and praying for their mercy, I'm going to get to that, we'll be elevated. We'll be elevated to that platform. That's what we want. That's the goal. That's the goal of life. So Prabhupada says here, and back in the, it's not mechanical. In the Ansha Lila, Volume 1, there's well, I consider it a famous verse. It's a famous verse for me. Krishnadas, and this is related. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he was the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, and I think was it his appearance there, disappearance there? No, it was, anyway, it was Lord Nityananda's appearance. So I was giving a class about that, and I mentioned him. But so anyway, his story was this. He was a devotee, and he had a brother, and his brother was a devotee of a sort, but his brother had faith in Lord Chaitanya, but didn't have faith in Lord Nityananda. And one day, a very famous devotee of Lord Nityananda came to visit the temple. His name was Miniketana Ramdas, and the pujari, I don't know if it was his brother. Was it his brother who was the pujari? His brother was either there witnessing it, or who was the pujari, it didn't show any respect, didn't acknowledge the presence of Miniketana Ramdas. It actually explains in the Nectar Devotion. I was just listening last night to some lecture Prabhupada gave on the Nectar Devotion in Vrindavan in 1972, and he was explaining that if a pujari could be right in the middle of doing an artik, but if the spiritual master comes in, like if Prabhupada would have come in and you're the pujari and you're doing an artik you're supposed to stop and acknowledge the pure devotee. That's the etiquette. That's the proper, the culture, the proper standard. So anyway, this he didn't do that, and he fell down. And Lord Nityananda came to him in a dream. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami came to him in a dream, and he told him, "Go to Vrindavan, because there you will attain all desirable things." So he went to Vrindavan, and he was fortunate enough to hear Raghunath Das Goswami discoursing about the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya for 2 hours every day. Raghunath Das Goswami did that for some years. He actually went to Vrindavan with the intention of committing suicide because he was feeling such intense separation from Lord Chaitanya and Swarup Damodar. He was living with them for some years at Jagannath Puri. But what happened when he got to Vrindavan, he got talked out of it, fortunately, by Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami. They said, "You can't do that. You have too much valuable stuff you need to share this with." So he agreed, and he was, every day for 2 or 3 hours he was talking about the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. So he did that. Finally he did, left, passed away, departed. And the devotees approached, after some time, approached Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, and they asked him to write, to put, because he was actually, his name means, Kaviraj means the king of the poets. Kavi is a poet, and Raj means the king. So they asked him to write about the later pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. There were actually already a few biographies of Lord Chaitanya available. There was one by, of course, Vrindavan Das Thakur. There was one by Lochan Das Thakur, and also, I think, Murari Gupta. So there was a few, but they were mostly focusing on the early pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. And so they wanted to hear about the later pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. So he agreed to do it. The thing was, he was in his 90s. He was in his 90s. And when you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, you'll see in the chapter called, I think it's the first chapter of the Madhya Lila, the Lord Chaitanya's later pastimes. He says towards the end of that chapter, he says, "I don't know how I'm doing this. I'm in my 90s. I'm shaking. My hands are shaking. I'm not seeing properly. I can't hear properly. I'm falling apart at the seams," basically, is what he said in so many words. "And yet I write." And he said, "It's a miracle." He said, I'm just following the dictation of Madan Gopal." So, that he considered it like a divine thing that he was able to do it. And following on from that, towards the end of the Chaitanya Charitamrita in the Ansha Lila, Volume 1, he makes this statement. He says, H.I. Goshai Kori Charanabandhan Jaha Hoite Bignanash Abhishtaparan. He says, I pray to the lotus feet of the 6 Goswamis, Srila Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Jiva Goswami, and Gopal Bhatta Goswami, so that all my impediments to writing this literature will be annihilated and my real desire will be fulfilled. That was his shelter. You see, his shelter was not his material ability. He wasn't taking shelter of the fact that, yeah, I'm so smart and I'm really talented writer and everything. No, he was taking shelter of the mercy, trying to get the mercy of the predecessor acharyas. That was what, he felt. If he's going to be successful, that's how it's going to happen, that he gets the mercy. And Prabhupada in the purport, Prabhupada gives a short purport, and this is relevant to us, and then I'll end the class on this note. Prabhupada says in his purport to that statement by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, says, if one wants to benefit the entire world, he will certainly find persons like hogs and pigs who will put forward many impediments. That is natural. But if a devotee seeks shelter at the lotus feet of the 6 Goswamis, the merciful Goswamis will certainly give the Lord's servitor all protection. It is not astonishing that impediments are placed before those who are spreading the Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. Prabhupada goes, nevertheless, if we adhere to, and this is it, if we adhere to the lotus feet of the 6 Goswamis and pray for their mercy, all impediments will be annihilated and the transcendental devotional desire to serve the Supreme Lord will be fulfilled. So that's a pretty big, nice, sort of an instruction and a benediction and a blessing all rolled into one. It's something we could all do. And it's not just, it sounds like it's Prabhupada's, in the purport, is like in a preaching mood. He's talking about benefiting the entire world, but you can take it as benefiting yourself too. It doesn't just apply to preaching. It applies to, if we take elsewhere, Narottam Das Thakur in that song we sing in the morning, sometimes we sing part of it, Harinam Sankirtan, he goes, H.I. Goshai Kori Charanabandhan, very similar to what Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami said, Jaha Hoite Bignanash Abhishtaparan, that by offering respects to the 6 Goswamis, all impediments will be, Bignanash will be, all obstacles, will be destroyed, and Abhishtaparan, and all spiritual desires fulfilled. So it's not just for preaching, it's personal too. If we, adhere to the lotus feet of the 6 Goswamis, which is like by reading Nectar of Devotion, reading Nectar of Instruction, putting these, what the instructions into practice in our life, and on top of that, pray for their mercy. That's important too. Actually, you could pray for the mercy just by, please give me your mercy, but another way, prayer is not just asking for something, prayer is glorification. You see? So this is a song by Srinivasacharya. Srinivasacharya was really special devotee, like, Narottam Das Thakur, Srinivasacharya. There's some really special devotees of Lord Chaitanya. He wrote this song, Sri Sri Sad Goswami Astika. Prabhupada chanted it in about 3 or 4 or 5 different tunes many times. It's a very important song. So, this is another way you could pray for the mercy by chanting this song. Actually, I'll tell you one little interesting thing. Prabhupada, when he was in New York in 1966, he was, when he was preaching down in the Bowery, he was giving like a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday Bhagavad Gita class, and there was just some people coming, random people. They weren't devotees. There were no devotees. This is before 26 2nd Avenue. This is before there was an International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So at the beginning of the class, at least on the recording, you hear Prabhupada right from the beginning breaking into singing this song. Prabhupada singing this song, and not only when Prabhupada would sing it, he just didn't sing it straight through quick. He would chant, and sometimes he would chant a particular verse, chant it again, and he chanted for 13 minutes. He chanted this song for 13 minutes, okay? Before the class. This was April 2nd, 1966. Why? When he chanted, it wasn't like the people that were there, however many there were, maybe there were 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, something, totally just random people off the street. They weren't responding. It wasn't like they knew the song and Prabhupada was leading them in a bhajan, like we do Jai Radha Madhava, the person who's giving the class chants and everything. That wasn't what was happening. It was just Prabhupada chanting straight, okay? There was no call and response there, point 1. Second point, when Prabhupada finished chanting the song, he didn't explain it. He didn't explain it. He didn't say, well, actually, this is a song by Srinivasacharya about the 6 Goswami, nothing. He just went on and started speaking. So what was Prabhupada doing? Well, my analysis is, Prabhupada was praying to the six Goswamis. Prabhupada was taking shelter. When Prabhupada was chanting these bhajans and prayers and everything, it wasn't for show, it wasn't theatrical. He was taking shelter. He was absorbed. He was praying for the mercy. He was praying, singing this song and praying for the mercy of the six Goswamis and the predecessor acharyas. So, there's precedence for this point. So I'll stop there. Does anybody have any question or comment? Ravindranath, Prabhu.
You were talking about sleeping, so like you said, if you sleep 8 hours, you consider you just really wasted your time. So how many hours should devotees actually sleep?
Well, there was a conversation between Prabhupada and devotees in India. I can't remember the exact date now, but Prabhupada said in that particular conversation about 6 times, he was telling the devotees, you should sleep 6 hours at night, and then you could take another hour during the day, 7 hours. That's what and at least in this particular conversation, Prabhupada seemed to indicate that was okay. He was okay with that. 6 hours at night and 1 hour nap during the day. So if you want to kind of have something to regulate yourself by, that's a good guideline. And you could find that if you do a little research on the Veda base or Vanipedia, you should be able to find that. Yeah, Maharaj. It's like the good old days. I gave a class and Maharaj gives his comment.
Prabhu was mentioning about 6, 7, 8 hours, many hours that they were chanting, and it seems like a long time for anyone who doesn't get the experiences that they were getting. When they chanted with their whole heart, with a feeling of devotion, a feeling of dedication, that what they were doing was glorifying not only the Goswamis, but glorifying the Supreme Lord. Therefore, as a result of that kind of chanting, they were getting something within themselves that normally most people, almost no people, get. And what is that? That it's an ecstasy. In ecstasies, many things happen within the body. The hands can shake. The heart starts beating fast. The breathing starts going very, very rapidly. Tears start flowing down from the eyes. These are all ecstatic symptoms which come from a person who is truly expressing and feeling love for Krishna. As a result of that love for Krishna, these symptoms are coming. And as a result of these symptoms coming, they are not ordinary. They're not put on. They're not the actions of an actor. An actor can also cry, he can also sweat, he can put on a lot of these same symptoms, but they're not coming from the same source. The source that these are coming, that we're talking about now, is love for Krishna. Love for Krishna means my body is yours, my mind is yours, Krishna. My intelligence is yours. My car is yours. Everything I own doesn't belong to me, it belongs to you. So when one has complete resolution and complete dedication, then those symptoms come. In other words, you have to earn them, like you go. They're surrendering. But they don't think they're surrendering. They just think that they should do what they should do. What's supposed to be done. So just, keep in mind. They do not consider what they are doing as being great. Rather than feel that they're cheating the Lord. They should be giving him more. And as a result of that attitude, they get it.
Thank you. Gurujaya Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you. It's a great talk.